Welcome to the latest installment of Don't Take This as Gospel. We are covering Dennis Prager's Bible commentary, The Rational Bible, Exodus, God, Slavery, and Freedom. And we're skipping ahead a few chapters to chapter 19. Now, we're not quite into the Ten Commandments yet, but we are getting close. This is kind of the run up to the Ten Commandments. And if you want to see if there's anything in the chapters that you missed, please go to my video description where I have an affiliate link that will lead you to a copy of this book where you can purchase it off of Amazon. Now, Exodus chapter 19, God is kind of giving a little lecture to the Israelites. And I'm not going to go into the verse itself. This is in some commentary of Dennis Prager's to verse 19:4, where he says that many of us find God's existence to be rationally self-evident. We find it more rational to believe there is a creator than to believe creation created itself. But there's more to belief in God than just believing God exists. It also means believing God cares about us. After all, if God exists but doesn't care about us, what difference does it make to us whether God exists? For all intents and purposes, there is no difference between atheism and the existence of a God who doesn't care about us. Now, I contend it is more rational to assume that God cares about his creation than to believe he doesn't. Because why would an uncaring creator create beings like us who care? Now, that last bit I threw in, I'm actually going to cover more that was into the first bit, but the last bit I thought was a really nice insight. I mean, we are creatures capable of caring about things in the world. We care about our pets, we care about our houses, we care about our stuff, we care about our appearance. We care, well, some of us do. I mean, look at me. But we care about various things. And to think that God would just create all of this universe that's full of complexity and then not care about it, not care about what happens to us, not care about really anything, is just kind of counterintuitive. So it's an interesting insight to say that, well, we care. Why do we think that God would create all of this and not care about it and not care about us? It's a good insight. But I kind of want to talk back to the other portion about it's not enough to believe that God exists, but also to believe that God cares about us, because it's very true. I mean, yes, if you want to have a relationship with somebody, then there has to be at least some caring in the direction from that person to you. And if every relationship is really a two-way street, so you need to be able to care about that person as well. But if there's no possibility of that person caring for you, then you can't really have a relationship with that person, because that person is not responding or reacting or taking into account anything that you do. So it's like you're not even there, and may as well that person not even be there. Now, I do have a little bit of a difference with Dennis Prager on the idea that there's no difference between atheism, which is the belief that God does not exist, and belief in a God who does exist but doesn't care about us. And I want to tie that back to an experience I had a long time ago on a cruise. And I was on a Bible cruise. It was a church cruise with this one particular minister, Alistair Begg, who was out of, I don't know where he's located out of, or if he's moved these days, or if he's even still alive. I'm not exactly sure on that, but he had this ministry, a radio show called Truth for Life. And it was one that I really enjoyed listening to at the time. So they had a church cruise that went to Alaska, and I went on that cruise. Now, at one of the dinners that they had, where you got to eat with various people who were on the cruise, I found out that at the table behind me was Governor Jack Kemp, who was also on the same Bible cruise. Now, I had no idea he was on the cruise with us. And maybe you are not familiar with that name, but Jack Kemp ran as Bob Dole's running mate in the Republican Party for the presidential election of 1996 against Bill Clinton. So if Bill Clinton had lost in 1996, Jack Kemp would have been the vice president of the United States. And he was sitting one table away from me. Now, I'm sitting with a table of various people, And, I mean, they're kind of interesting. But Jack Kemp is behind me, and I can hear him starting to tell stories and stuff like that. And can you imagine the kinds of stories that Jack Kemp could tell about his time in the Republican Party, or as a governor, as a politician, running in the campaign? What was that like? Just all of the stuff, just political knowledge. I mean, there's so much wealth of knowledge and information that was sitting one table away from me, and I had no access to it. And it was just killing me the entire time. I couldn't even really enjoy having that dinner with the rest of the people at the table around me. I mean, it's not that they weren't nice people, but they weren't Jack Kemp. You know, I mean, if you just substitute your favorite celebrity. I mean, if your favorite celebrity is Tom Cruise, and he's sitting at the table behind you and having conversations with and sharing things with all of these other people who are just eating it up, and you're so close and so yet so far. Imagine that. Imagine that. I mean, it'd be one thing if you were, say, quote unquote, atheistic about the celebrity at the table behind you and say, they just think maybe some guy named Tom Cruise is over there. Maybe it's not really Tom Cruise. It's just some guy named Tom Cruise and he's snowing them all. And, they think, that doesn't even really look like Tom Cruise or something. I mean, you can probably convince yourself into thinking they're not really having as good a time as they really are. You could have that opportunity for self-delusion. But if you knew Tom Cruise was sitting behind you, oh, that would just gnaw at you, wouldn't it? I mean, I just couldn't imagine. So, how does that relate to heaven and hell? Because there's a lot of imagery that surrounds heaven and hell. There's a lot of imagery of the you're sitting on the cloud with your own harp strumming your own tune and you're just blissfully happy and so on and so forth. And then in hell, you got the people who are like swimming around in a lake of fire and burning in agony and screaming. But what if it's more subtle than that? Because a lot of Christianity, a lot of the New Testament puts heaven and hell in relationship terms, in terms of being in the club or being out of the club, in terms of being at the celebrity table or not being at the celebrity table. Like the thing about Jesus and the wedding, and talking about the wedding feast, the parable of the wedding feast. You have the 5 lazy bridesmaids, and you have the 5 diligent bridesmaids, and the 5 diligent bridesmaids, they've got their candles lit, they've got all their stuff together, but the 5 lazy ones, they're just messing around, and they're not really paying attention. And then the call comes up, and it's time for the wedding feast, and the diligent bridesmaids, they head in, they're right in the door, they're gonna have the front row center and everything, and the door is shut and the 5 lazy bridesmaids are outside and they can't get in, and they know that the fun's all inside, and they're outside the door banging and saying, let us in, let us in, let us in, let us in, and they can't get in, and they'll never get in. And that's the way that hell is portrayed a lot. Heaven and hell, the difference between heaven and hell is portrayed as being inside or out, and being at the one table or the other. So just imagine for a second, imagine that heaven and hell were like that dinner banquet room on the cruise ship. And you had to sit at this table that was full of people just like yourself, and all of you might have your little stories to tell, from your own biased perspectives, from your own personal incomplete experiences, from your own incomplete store of knowledge, from just your human experience. And you have all eternity to spend with that group of people, and eventually you're going to run out of things to say. Eventually you're going to get bored. Eventually you're going to get fed up with the other person's thoughts or point of views and stuff like that. You're going to get, it's going to start driving you insane, because you don't even know if there's any truth to what they're telling you, because they're all flawed human beings just like yourself. You are sitting at this table where there's all just imperfection and darkness. But at the other table, think about what the other table, because at the other table, guess who's sitting at the other table? God is sitting at the other table. God is sitting at the other table, and God, oh my gosh, can you believe the stories that God could tell? God could be telling you all these stories about, creating the universe and, bringing, what was it like to become incarnate as a human being in Jesus, and what was, what was separating light from the darkness like? What was the whole Noah's Ark and the flood thing about? How did you get so many animals onto the ark, and how large was the ark really? How many people came out of Israel exactly? Because we're still not really all that sure. How many? What was the cause behind this? Why is it that this person, was allowed to rise from the dead, but not that person? Why is it that this person died in combat, but that person did it? Why is it my parents treated me like this? Why is it that my family dynamics were as screwed up as they were? And you could ask all these questions and get real answers. And you could get answers to all of the questions you ever had and find out everything that had ever happened from an honest and true perspective. And all of that is going on at the table you'll never sit at. All of that conversation is going on with the person who will never care about you, ever. How do you think that's going to feel? It's probably going to feel like hell. So that's where I kind of disagree with Dennis on the idea that, atheism and belief in a God who doesn't care about you are the same thing. Because it's really not. At least with atheism, you don't believe there's another table where something better is going on. But, when God draws back the curtain and reveals himself so that there's no question that God exists, atheists aren't going to be able to delude themselves anymore. They're going to know that there's another table back there where all the fun's happening. And they're stuck here. That's going to be so much worse. I'm Mike Partika. This has been Don't Take This as Gospel. We will be continuing in the Rational Bible, Exodus, God, Slavery, and Freedom. Again, if you want to pick up a copy of the book, please check the YouTube the YouTube description. But if you'd like to subscribe to this particular channel, I would appreciate it very much. And you will be kept in the loop when we do more updates. So thank you for listening, and I will talk to you later.